All right, hello everyone. My name is Fabien, and today I'm gonna present you a speech on the "Don't Touch My Data" topic. I'm a business designer working for Nordea. I started working there for a couple of years ago. My background is more into startup. I worked many years in UX design, business development, service design for different corporations and industries. And my skill set is more about user research, UX research, prototyping, service design. And as you see on the viability side, that's why I call myself business designer. I'm doing nowadays a lot more of business modeling, value proposition design for Nordea in transaction banking. So I come, I'm not going to tell you today where my lovely accent comes from, but I'm sure you will figure it out soon. But before I start moving into my talk, I think every good story starts somewhere. And my personal stories most often start there, in Paris. So it was in 2016, actually. And I was in Paris, and my wife is based in Finland, so I was chatting with my wife over MSN, and suddenly I see something weird on her profile. So I'm chatting, and I see an announcement that my wife is actually dead. So on the profile on her Facebook profile, and okay, this is not exactly the same announcement, but I was quite astonished and surprised. So I was wondering, with whom I'm actually chatting. Is it a bot, a chatbot, or is it a ghost? So I was not really sure of what does it mean. So of course, I called my wife straight away and said to inform her that what has happened, and start Googling, and I found out that Facebook has actually for a specific period of time made an announcement on people's Facebook's profile that they were dead. So it was kind of a huge huge backlash. And for me, for Facebook, it was just a simple message. But for me, somehow I felt like, do I trust those guys? With my data and how they handle my data. I mean, just from curiosity, how many people really trust companies that they handle responsibly their personal data? Please stand up. Do you trust? No, that's what I thought. So, and of course, 2 years later, Cambridge Analytica scandal came out, releasing millions of user data from Facebook profile has been harvested for political purposes, and we all knew that what happened with Facebook and social media in general. So where is bank into this? I work for Nordea, and when you think about it, bank have not always had the best reputation on the market for since the financial crisis. But there is one thing that especially in the Nordics, banks still have is trust that their financial data is actually protected. So when you think about how much data we are processing, that's not only the personal, the financial data. There is a huge opportunity for banks to create new services based on data. And in the past couple of years, I've been shaping new services for Nordea, which is based on the transaction data in a very different range of context. And during this time, I came up with and one other thing is that the Nordics, how does it come into Nordics? There are very different aspects in the Nordic which make it a very good playground for banks and fintechs in general to become front runner in data-driven services. And of course, there is the European legislation, the GDPR, the PSD2, but there are things which are more specific to the Nordic countries, such as availability of public APIs, the digitalization of e-receipts, open banking, which is pretty much advanced in the Nordics. Of course, new technologies, front runner like 5G, and last but not least, the cashless society. Because I lived almost 10 years in Germany, I still paid half of my purchases on cash. So it did not really enable this type of service. Whereas in the Nordics, everything all cash there is not much cash available anymore. So during my work, I came up with I was thinking about, what are the kind of key guiding principle to design data-driven services in the banking context. And I would give you, a short overview on each of them with some concrete examples. The first one is maximize the value for the users. Everything starts with, you can use the data, but it needs to make sense from the user perspective. How could you make insights, valuable insights and actionable insights from this data? But this, in a way, it's quite important to rethink as well business models in banking to understand, how do we actually use the data. And while doing it, you need to ensure transparency, full transparency to the users, and there are as well other opportunities to create new business models out of data, which would help you to think sustainability and how can you use the data for a greater purpose. And last but not least, and I will finish my talk with this, is don't forget to explore new grounds. There are things that you wouldn't think about, which are great opportunities for banks at the moment. So let's start with maximizing value. So we all know that I worked in fintech before and seen very different type of startups working on this. And so how do you maximize value? How do you create insights, concrete insight for users? So of course we started with what most banks start with is how to get a daily, weekly, and monthly overview on the money I spent. So this is pretty much standard in the banking industry. The problem, what I see here with this approach is that like every financial player are doing it, some are doing it better than others, but it's not create a real competitive advantage for banks. So we definitely need to go beyond this. And when we think about it, the overview of our spending is pretty much basic, when we think that what other companies are doing out of data. So we need to go much deeper. We need to personalize our service and to move into how well do I manage my finance? How do I make this data actionable? And how do I compare with others? Like benchmarking your data with your neighbors have proved to have a very good impact. For instance, we could say, how many people how much do people spend on the electricity within your area? So it is the type of data which means that comparing your data with people around you would help you to make this data actionable and make some change in your spending patterns. And last but not least, how do I fulfill my dream financially? Like everyone has different dreams and different ways to perceive finance. So these are the things that we are working on. And there is one partnership, of course, we have where we within our team we are developing the Nordea wallet, which is tracking your spending, and we are now partnering with Subio, which is a startup, and we have invested as well in them, which is a startup which optimize actually users' spending by tracking all type of subscriptions that you have. So it's very easy for people to subscribe to new services, Netflix, but many people don't really keep track of how many subscriptions or how much money they spend on a monthly basis. So this has been very successful, and we really believe that we should move towards this and create new type of service of this sort. But as I said before, when I started working with a bank, the revenue model, the basic revenue model that we have within the bank hasn't changed, for decades. It's still really based on consumer finance, on transactions, and in my opinion, we cannot really create sustainable services if we don't reinvent our business models. So new opportunities out there is to create, as we all know, all the tech giants have made billions of euros out of facilitating the exchange of value between two different customer segments. So how can bank become more of a platform business model and facilitate the value exchange between, for instance, merchants and their customers? And so there are many different types of partnerships where we could include collaboration with different merchants to create a win-win situation. So another example is based on saving. How can I achieve my goals financially? Okay, you want to we could support you by, for instance, you want to save for a road trip next year in the US. So we could have a partnership with an airline where there is kind of supporting, the airline is supporting their customers to achieve their dream and go on the trip to the US. So, and then of course, how can I spend smarter? And then that it means that identifying patterns in the data to help people to spend smarter money and save money on a daily basis. So this type of new business models would force us to actually rethink our value offering, and we should think about, because before we created service for our customers to support the basic business model. But now we are in the process where we start thinking new type of service and saying, hey, should we offer a bank agnostic services? So when we reinvent a new business model, we don't think about only Nordea's customers. We think about, if this is really provide value, why don't we offer this type of service as well to other banks' customers, which is the next step in the evolution. And I think when you look at mobile pay and different type of services which are going in this direction, rebrand new services and offer it to a wide range of banks' customers. And this is one example of Transaction Connect, which is a startup which turn any payment card into a loyalty card. And so it's a French startup actually, and they are entering the Nordic market. And we are creating as well services which, at Nordea, which somehow facilitate the value exchange between merchants and their customers. But while doing this, we're moving on a shaky ground somehow. And this cannot really happen if we don't ensure the full transparency. And reminding of the scandal from Facebook, I think banks can get into this new business model only if they are clearly transparent, not only on how they use the data, but as well providing full flexibility on how to manage and update as well the privacy, creating really privacy by design. And but this means as well being totally transparent on how we earn money, which is somehow quite counterintuitive for banks, since our business model and revenue model is really intransparent. And like we are actually the only industry charging on without asking people permission. So we're not sending invoice, we're just taking the money back from the account. So this means that if we create new business model, more transparent business model, we need to rethink as well how we communicate on this. So it means that not only on the service layer, we need to fundamentally reshape how we communicate on our services, full transparency, and as well on the pricing model. And so a good example on how to communicate on the revenue model. I worked together on a partnership with N26 before in Berlin, and what I really enjoyed is how they managed the kind of classical business model of the overdraft. And the overdraft is again a tool for banks traditionally to make a lot of money. Nobody is telling you when you get into the overdraft, and there is actually, you're being charged quite big time on this. So how N26 was quite clever about it. They made it totally transparent to select the limit, and they offered the opportunity to have an overdraft alert. So it means that they're totally transparent on how much does it cost, how much flexibility to have the right overdraft for you, and you can as well be informed to avoid that. Okay, you're being into the overdraft without being aware of this. So I think this is definitely a direction where we should move on. The other opportunity, and which is much, in my opinion, a bigger opportunity on a larger scale, is how can we use the data for a greater purpose, and sustainability, and I think banks in general needs to go beyond what the legislation is asking for. I mean, like GDPR legislation or type of it. We need to go beyond it. So how can we use the credit card data to help people to consume more sustainably? How can I compensate for my carbon footprint? These are new topics which are really concrete, because we are now partnering up with the Holland's index, which is one index which helps you to track your spending habits and see actually the carbon footprint of your own consumption on a monthly basis. And I'm going to show you a video which explains a little bit the index.
Group of small islands in the middle of the Baltic Sea is home base for a local bank. For almost 100 years, it's supported the families of farmers, sailors and fishermen living from the sea. Now, with 90 million people living around the Baltic Sea coastline, dumping a mix of toxins into its waters, the situation is critical and oxygen levels are alarmingly low. The seabed is being strangled to death, and in parts, it's already dead.
It's obvious. In order to care for our customers, we need to care for the sea. As a bank, we analyze data to try to understand risks. We also wanted to apply this behavior in an environmental perspective, in order to influence everyday decisions made by our customers.
To enable this, the Bank of Åland developed the Baltic Sea Project credit card and the Åland Index. The index merges credit card transaction data with that of financial investment analysis and calculates the individual carbon footprint of each transaction. This alignment has created the world's first bank index for everyday environmental impact. The result is presented with the monthly bill, as are the options to compensate locally, globally, or by lifestyle. Over time, you can track and compare your behavior with the national average. For all the status levels, the bank is now replacing all its credit cards in Finland, and soon they will also be available in Sweden. But no man is an island. That's why the Bank of Åland is making the index available to any bank that believes that change is driven by insight, substantiated by data, and created together.
So now we are actually integrating the Ålands Index. This is one example that, of the things that you can do out of the data. And the Ålands Index is not only tracking your monthly spending and how environmental friendly it is, it helps you, you can compensate as well for the carbon footprint. So you can invest in, donate some money to sustainable organizations, can do different things on that. So I think it's a very interesting model, which shows that we can go actually much beyond what we have thought about in the previously. And the last aspect is exploring new grounds. And this is really started, and I remember the first part of my presentation was related to how tech giants are handling data and the lack of trust that they are having in the moment. So which create a new somehow opportunity, because bank traditionally has been kind of more trustworthy on how they handle the financial data. So in the previous business model that we considered between merchants and users, somehow the bank was still a kind of I wouldn't say data broker, but quite closer to it. So how we can use the data to facilitate the exchange of value. The next level is actually how could we rather position ourselves as the gatekeeper. So not monetizing any sort of data, but actually protecting the data and helping people to be aware on how their data is handled and being in full control of it. So this is something that we have started to explore, and we did a lot of research last year, and we did some qualitative and quantitative studies, and we sent a questionnaire to thousands of people in the Nordics, and we asked actually very different questions which relate to the handling of their own data. The first question was, have you ever thought that you would like to get better understanding on what data different companies or organizations have about you? And I guess, from your answer, you would answer mostly yes. So in the Nordics, most of people was like 84% actually are concerned about how the data are handled and would wish to have more information on how the data is handled and have better control over it. The second question was related more on, because somehow the data with this was traditionally, in the last few years, more on the social media and tech giants. So how trusting and competent you feel about social media, Google, Facebook, to handle your personal data. So if you look at it, and sorry, it's in Finnish, so the 1 is not at all, and the 7 is very competent. So you see that the majority of respondents felt deceived and didn't really perceive all these tech companies as being trustworthy. So the interesting and where I see the opportunity for banking is that when we ask the question how trusting and competent you feel about your bank to handle your personal data, then it was the other way around. And we, like I said, we ask especially in the response in the Nordic countries. So we see clearly an opportunity for banks to leverage and create new services based on the trust that they have on the market. And the last question is, would you like to have your bank, which is totally normal, to have your bank providing an overview of all data handled by different companies as well as the full control of it? And in this case, 74% responded yes. And we did, like I said, we validated our assumptions before with qualitative studies, and we made a survey following it. And there are some interesting examples on the market. There is a lot of things happening in this space on my data at the moment. But one example from the Deutsche Bank in Germany, they start offering this API and platform for people to have access to their banking data in third-party environment. And so they start really launching several services, really using the trust that people have in their institution. And at Nordea we're actually prototyping and testing new services in this respect. So, and I would be a little bit selfish. Would you trust your bank to handle your personal data from third party? Please raise your hand if you agree with this statement. All right. So we are not there yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabien. That was an awesome talk. Are there any questions that you would like to ask regarding this? Welcome back.
The question hound is here.
Yes. Are you going to threaten us again, or?
Yeah.
Yes, there is one question.
There's one. All right.
Simply this. I love the ideas. It's all very world-embracing stuff, but I think the banks are in it for the money. So where's the beef for the bank?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think the main challenge is the business model. Because of course, you cannot. So my data, for instance, which is an initiative, you can somehow monetize your own data, but we based on our research, it's not really what people want. So are people willing to pay actually for a monthly subscription, for instance, to have access and control over all of the data provided in third-party services? This is something that we are testing at the moment. But the business model should rather be on the user side, because then we will ensure a full transparency and trust in the system.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, just a personal interest for the compensation of your, let's say, CO2. Are you considering like green financing or like this stock compensation or something like that?
Yeah, we have few solutions on this, green stock, and we are quite we have invested quite a lot in this. How the impact investing type of thing. But it's mostly for investors. It would be interesting to make it available to the public, and this is something what would be one way to do it somehow.
Yeah, because I think like in Finland, there's still people are still kind of shy in when it comes to investment or funds or stocks, so it might be interesting.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Fabien, for the presentation. It was really interesting. I would like to ask you about this example with N26, when they show the overdraft threshold. And projects like that, so you said that for the bank, it means that the bank will lose revenue, because for the bank it's good that people go over and they are charged. How difficult it is for you to convince people in Nordea to actually go for that transparency and honesty towards the client? What does it take you to do? Is it like user testing? Is it prototyping? Like what kind of tools do you use to convince people about it?
One tool is giving public talk about it. So this is definitely one way to convince as well people to change the mindset. But I won't give, I won't tell you bullshit about it. It's really hard. It's really hard because we are working on new services. So people expect, okay, it's fine to have like the green bonds, wealth investment, new type of services. But this touched the core of what banking is and how banking has operated, in the last decades. So it's something, related to change. How can we trigger the change? I think we can trigger the change by launching services like this Holland's index and showing that there is new ways to do it, and as well showing that there are new ways to make money. Because when I discuss, most of the banks focus heavily on the user experience, digital apps, but there is no new model behind it. So that's why we are really experimenting with new business models to show that there actually behind this would be new revenues as well. So it means that we could compensate the lack of revenue on this side, providing full transparency with new revenue models. So I think that's one way to convince that over time, we would move in this direction. But we are not there yet. That's definitely it.
Yeah, thanks for the speech. You were mostly speaking about services targeted for consumers, but have you planned any data services for companies?
Yes, that's a good question. It's something that we are considering as well. The thing is that I haven't communicated heavily in my talk because it's still under development. But there are, in a way, when I showed as well the type of platform business model, these are services which would be offered to corporates as well. So there is one part with the value proposition to the end user, but the other part is to corporations. And there are as well many things that you can see out of aggregated data from the credit card company. And many companies like BBVA in Spain, for instance, being quite active on the space. But we are rather cautious, and we rather use aggregated data for sustainable purposes, for instance, to show that there is actually something, you can do it for a greater good. So we are doing both and working on this definitely, yeah.